Hey everyone, Travis here at BlizzCon 2014. I am joined by Brian Kibler. Kibler? Where are we at? Kibler.
Or Brian Kibler. Yes. Kibler if you read Twitch chat.
Yes. It's very, for League of Legends fans, very similar to JoJo Miller. Anyway, Brian, this is our first ever interview, but of course you are someone who a lot of people have known for a very long time in the card game world, I guess it is, right? And we are actually here at the Hearthstone tournament. You've recently, how recently? Because I remember we talked at PAX, but I feel like more and more you've been doing more Hearthstone stuff recently. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing Hearthstone way back during closed beta. I played a lot of Arena back then. Only really delved into the constructed scene when a friend of mine, actually, when I was in Atlanta for a Magic tournament, was like, hey man, you should try this out. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I started playing, and I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty cool. And, you know, I started playing a bit, and, you know, started, like, randomly playing, and, like, I randomly played in a tournament that some friends of mine were, you know, told me was about the night before, and I ended up getting second place. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try playing a little bit more of this. So I've been getting a little bit more into it.
I actually saw an article you had written up recently that I saw over on the Hearthstone subreddit, so you've been making content. That's really cool. Either way, let's talk a little bit about BlizzCon right now. So before we get into, you know, sort of the stuff that they talked about, they announced, what do you think of the tournament so far?
I think it's been pretty exciting. I actually went last weekend, was able to hang out a little bit at the studio in Burbank and check out the group stage rounds. And, you know, there's, you know, a lot of really good players, a lot of really you know, exciting moments that have happened so far. So it's been a really cool tournament.
Have you had any surprises or anything that really was like, oh wow, I can't believe that happened, or even do you have any predictions for maybe an upset?
I don't know about an upset. I know I've talked to a number of players who've been really impressed by a lot of the Eastern players. Most people in the Hearthstone scene are really familiar with a lot of the sort of Western pros and streamers. You know, players like StrifeClo, players like Kalento. But a lot of the Chinese and Korean players like Titular Celestial and Kranich, they've had really strong performances that, you know, people who pretty much know Hearthstone from Twitch won't really have anticipated.
So, as a League of Legends guy who also followed StarCraft before that, very used to this, like, hey, these Eastern players are showing up, they're starting to win stuff. Do you think there's a chance we're going to see a similar situation to what we see in other esports where it's just like Chinese and Korean players suddenly dominate the top of the charts?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, Hearthstone's a lot different than a lot of those games in terms of the just repetitive practice in terms of mechanical ability isn't nearly as important as it is in games like StarCraft, like League of Legends. You know, I played in competitive card games for almost 20 years now, and you know, the Eastern players don't really dominate there. I mean, there are a lot of strong Japanese players, but it's a much sort of different environment than it is in a lot of the esports like, you know, MOBAs or RTS games.
All right, so maybe we're safe here.
Could be.
Let's see.
There was an era where the Japanese completely dominated Magic, so it could be coming here too.
Now, we were talking a little bit before this interview about how I've been out of the loop, as it were, covering like League of Legends stuff, and we were talking a little bit about what's strong right now. You know, there was a lot of discussion around like Hunters earlier, and they were pretty strong, and now obviously Warlocks are. They seem to always be around. It's just this like really strong thing. What do you think are some of the stronger things that we're seeing at the tournament here?
Well, I actually had an interesting conversation with StrifeCro when I was at the studio in Burbank last week, where he was saying that he thought that one of the best strategies overall is to just bring multiple aggressive decks. Because a lot of people, because there are so few real aggressive strategies that you can play, because it's, you know, it's the single class, you can only play one deck of any class. There are only a couple classes that really legitimately have aggressive decks. You know, there's really Hunter and Warlock that have particularly strong aggressive builds. You've sort of the mid-range-ish combo deck out of Druid, but his strategy was to bring both sort of Zoo, Warlock, and Hunter, and you know, sort of exploit the fact that a lot of his opponent's decks will contain cards like, you know, like Ysera, like you know, Black Knight, which are really pretty weak because they're prepared for more mid-range and control matchups. So I was pretty impressed by that sort of game theory matrix he did there.
It's actually pretty interesting. I do love that Hearthstone just seems to have so much depth. I remember when it first came out and people were like, oh no, it's not going to be that interesting, and maybe even, I'm curious what your initial impressions were of the game as like somebody who's been around doing Magic, all that kind of stuff for so long, compared to now. Like, has it stuff shifted for you as you've started to play more of these decks?
I mean, I definitely think that it's gotten a lot more interesting. I mean, that's one of the things that's going to be true of any sort of collectible, sort of expandable game. as there's new content, there's just more things to explore. You sort of have the natural sort of ebb and flow of any kind of metagame. I think Nexramus, did a lot to sort of shake up the format, and it's really exciting to see the Goblins versus Gnomes expansion that's going to be coming out next month, because that really will also do a lot to sort of shake things up. New content that really changes things is the lifeblood of any collectible game, and the more we see of that, the more interesting things will be.
I love that you gave me the perfect segue into where I wanted to sort of round this out.
It's not my first rodeo here, so.
Is it? So first off, Gnomes versus Goblins or Goblins versus Gnomes? Which one?
I think it's Goblins versus Gnomes. I think that's the way it goes. I don't know. There's a Goblin on the left and the Gnome on the right in the ad thing.
So you figure you read it like that. Okay, so Goblins versus Gnomes, 120 cards. They're saying. Supposedly we're going to see some really interesting stuff. I know they already showed some of the cards. I don't know if you had a chance to see those, but.
I played a little bit of the demo over there. I actually had a conversation with Ben Brode. Ben and I actually worked together years ago, working in the World of Warcraft trading card game. I was actually working on that at Upper Deck, and he was at Blizzard, and it's kind of funny all that going back. But he was telling me that the decks that they set up here are really sort of demo decks to give people sort of the craziest, most fun experience they thought they could have with those. There's a lot of like weird, random kinds of cards there, and he was trying to emphasize that this isn't what the set is all about. It might look like it from the demo you've seen so far, but that's only a small segment. And they just did that for the demo because they thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask you about, because it seems as though there is a lot of RNG in this, but you're suggesting that that's not going to be like the theme of the deck or the theme of the expansion.
That's what Ben Brode was suggesting to me. So if you trust him, and he's an honest guy with an honest laugh. So how can you not?
I was going to ask you, back when you were working with him, did he always have that laugh?
Oh, he was always pretty loud. As actually he was working himself and Sean Cairns, who actually went to work at Riot and now works. I forget the name of the
Kickside.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what it is. And yeah, he was. His nickname was Captain Volume, so you can imagine what the duo was like working together. So definitely a fun group of guys to work with.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for the interview. It's always good to run into you, but I'm happy that we finally got to do first ever interview. Anything you think that people should look forward to over the course of this weekend?
I mean, I've just had a blast checking out all the cool new stuff. Really excited to see the new Hearthstone stuff coming out. I personally haven't had a chance to play Overwatch yet, but it looks really cool. And yeah. Just, this is my first BlizzCon in a while. I actually was at the first several BlizzCons, but haven't been here pretty much since I quit playing WoW to start playing card games again. But now they have card games here too, so I'm back.
Well, that about rounds out the interview. Thank you so much. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of our coverage of all things BlizzCon at ongamers.com.